Hello, trading has closed on the 11th of April, 2024. We always do our disclaimer. We'll go over our calls. We'll make some predictions. It's my trading plan for tomorrow, Friday, the 12th of April, 2024. Please remember, my calls can be wrong. Trade at your own risk. You can order my system here. And at the very least, remember it comes up with price targets rather than price entries. We looked for the pattern today with the early high, which is this, and tomorrow should have the early low. We had a few calls. We said the commonest thing was a gap and a prompt move outside the day's range. That happened. We said if yesterday's drop was to continue unabated, we should gap under the low of yesterday. Well, that didn't happen. We said if we gapped up smartly that yesterday's break could turn out to be false. It's looking that way, but certainly isn't a lock. We do have a new target, 51.3876. It might fail because this looks superficially like a rejection of yesterday's break. There are two things I look for. One is whether the RSI is over or under 50. Here it's 54, so we dipped under it, but we couldn't hold it. And the other is whether price is under the last FOMC announcement price, and it was, but it didn't stay there. That can be interpreted as a rejection. We also said if, we'll come back to that in just a minute. We had a sell signal in the morning and then we went straight up. Now there is a pattern I discuss in my book called the AM plus 3 buy signal, where you get a valid sell signal in the morning and immediately rally past this high of this yellow line, and that tends to rally the rest of the day. There are certain rules, and one rule is you can't consolidate first. So I came up with these rules based on studying a lot of patterns, and usually when you rally like this, then you consolidate before breaking higher. It doesn't work. So this really isn't the usual pattern, although it certainly has the characteristics of this AM plus 3 buy signal. I can't say it is because it broke the rule about no consolidation. Just for the record, if it were an AM plus 3 buy signal, this would fail and we'd undercut this low, and that still is our target, because the sell signal target hasn't been satisfied. At the very least, we should undercut the low, 51.3876. This whole thing is called false by the system. Now in the afternoon, we got a buy signal, and that printed the minimum immediately, but there's no reason to stop at the minimum. It's not too good that the last couple hours didn't accomplish much. We traded under all this business here, so maybe we are going to hit the target, but if we gap up over this, all that negativity goes away. And as we'll see, this is a very strong resistance area. Now we said yesterday that if this low held, 51.3870, that the MEJT pattern favored a big rally. It held by 7 cents. So I guess it held and we got the big rally. I have to admit I'm not used to these things holding by 7 cents. I mean, usually it holds by a lot more than that, but it did work. Now we have a few patterns. Here we had a wall into the close. It's the wall with gap pattern. And what happens is that you tend to fill the gap pretty soon, usually by the next day, and there's resistance over the gap. Well, the high of the gap is 52.1120. Today's high was 52.1178, so far that's worked. The resistance has held. We also have the diamond on stilts pattern. Remember, half a diamond's enough. And here's the origin of the left stilt. And this is the first test of the origin of the left stilt. And if, as I said yesterday, you test it a number of times the first day, that just counts as once. But if you test it after a day or two, that's the second test of the origin of the left stilt. It has a tendency to break through in grand style. Now, a tendency and a requirement, that's not the same thing. But usually, not always, if you come up to here, again, you're going to break through and really fly on the upside. But you haven't broken through yet. We've also stopped right at a 61.8% retracement of the drop from this high to this low. All this resistance is right here, and we've stopped right at resistance. But we haven't gone down far enough to make certain that resistance is going to hold. If we take out this low, it would be far enough for me. Probably that's going to hold. But for right now, you're just having a break, stopping at resistance, and consolidating. You haven't accomplished anything till you take out that low. So we're in a situation we have a straight line rally to resistance. We either gap over it or resistance wins. And if resistance wins, we have a lower target 51.3876. And if it doesn't win, if you gap over this high and don't reject it immediately, we could have a huge rally. We could even rally to a new all-time high. Well, tomorrow's pattern has the early low regardless of where we open. We rally to an area of strong resistance in a straight line. If that resistance holds, there's a target to undercut today's low, most likely by Monday's close. But if we break through that resistance, the pattern is quite bullish and puts much higher targets into play. Don't forget, we apparently have rejected the break of yesterday, and we have a second test of the origin of the left stilt. So the fact that you stopped here doesn't mean you're not going to gap over it tomorrow. Now, it's possible to interpret today's reversal as a rejection of the trade yesterday under the RSI level of 50 and the March FOMC announcement price. Now, like any reversal, it needs confirmation by continuing higher. If we just keep dropping tomorrow, then resistance wins. I mean, that's the way it goes. There may be a day with a close little change first. That can always happen. But the odds are favoring a big move here. Gapping over today's high with conviction. I don't mean by just a few pennies. I mean a clear break. That would be quite bullish. Even though I can't count the recent declines, having seen its low. Normally, when you're down from a high, I can count this with some kind of good Fibonacci patterns. You don't have to have Fibonacci patterns, but if I don't see them, I just assume the move isn't over. But that doesn't mean we have to drop tomorrow. I mean, if this holds, we have a lower target, 51.3876. But this retrace here could easily gap over this high. If we gap over this high after rejecting this low, it could be a real party on the upside, even though I'm not convinced that the entirety of the drop is over. You could have a flat, expanded flat. You can go much higher and then undercut this later. So we'll have to see if resistance holds or not. It's the pattern with the early low. That doesn't tell us where we open, and that's today's call.